If you're visiting Disneyland Paris for the very first time, then make sure to watch this video because I'm going to give you all the tips to make sure your first visit to Disneyland Paris is extremely magical. Hi everyone, how's life, and welcome to another one of my videos. Now if you're new to my channel, my name is Sam, and if you're familiar with my videos, you know that I'm in Disneyland Paris very regularly. I've been an annual pass holder for almost a decade now, so I'm extremely familiar with the parks. I know all the tips and tricks to make sure that you have an amazing, perfect time when you come visit Disneyland Paris. So in this video we're going to cover everything from character interactions to food to parades, everything that you need to know for your very first trip. Okay, let's get through the basics first. Obviously you need to be wearing comfortable shoes and outfits because you're going to be walking quite a lot. The parks are rather big and there's 2 parks here in Disneyland Paris. Definitely book your tickets in advance because you can't actually get or buy tickets at the door in Disneyland Paris anymore. This was something that stopped after COVID. Worth noting that if you have an undated ticket, you definitely have to make a reservation for the exact date that you want to visit the parks, otherwise you're not going to be guaranteed entry, unfortunately. But if you've got a dated ticket for a specific date, or if you've booked a whole package at a Disney hotel, then you're absolutely fine. You don't need to make an extra reservation. Also, make sure to have already downloaded the official Disneyland Paris app before your visit. It's just going to make your life so much easier because all the information that you need about being in the parks is going to be on the app, including which rides are closed when you visit. So if you particularly want to go on a certain ride, then definitely check that in advance. You can find that out on the app or on the official Disneyland Paris website. Now let's get to some of the more specific but fun Disneyland Paris tips. Firstly, if it's your first visit, you need to know that Disneyland Paris actually has 2 parks. One of them is Disneyland Park, which is the castle park, the Magic Kingdom style park. The second gate of Disneyland Paris is called Walt Disney Studios Park, which will later be called Disney Adventure World in a year or so. If you've purchased a park hopper ticket, then you can easily park up between the 2 parks because they're very close to each other. You can easily walk between them. It takes about 5 minutes max. So make sure that if you want to visit both of the parks on the same day, that you have purchased a park hopper ticket, not just a park ticket for each park individually. Now let's talk about rides, because rides of course are a big part of any Disney visit, and we're going to start with the rides here in Disneyland Park first. So the most popular rides in Disneyland Park are of course Big Thunder Mountain, Hyperspace Mountain, Peter Pan's Flight, Buzz Lightyear's Laser Blast, and Autopia as well. Sometimes gets very long lines. Now I'm not going to go through every single ride and what they are. You can find that out on the website, or if you check out any of my vlogs, and you can see exactly what each of these rides look like. But Big Thunder Mountain needs to be your priority. If you love roller coasters, if you've been on Big Thunder Mountain in any of the other parks, especially the US parks, then Disneyland Paris' Big Thunder Mountain is by far the best. I can guarantee that. I've been on all of them in the world, and Disneyland Paris is definitely the best one. It's the longest one, it's the fastest one. It's a little bit scarier than some of the other ones because it goes underwater, it gets very dark, there's loads of loud noises. It's a very fun, thrilling ride. So if you want to get on that, the best way is to rope drop. Or if you're staying in a Disney hotel, then you will have access to extra magic time, which means that 1 hour before park opening time, which is normally 9:30 in the morning, you're able to come into the park and you've got a whole hour from 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning to access some of the attractions. Now, not every single attraction is going to be open during the extra magic time, and it's important to check on the app every single day that you're coming in for extra magic time because it does tend to vary. Usually most of the attractions in Discoveryland tend to be open, so Hyperspace Mountain and Buzz can be good rides to go on in the morning. Quite a few rides in Fantasyland also open up, so Peter Pan's Flight is one that a lot of people go to during extra magic time. But Big Thunder Mountain's a bit hit or miss. Sometimes they open it up, sometimes they don't, so definitely make sure to check the app before you make your way towards that direction. But yeah, if you are rope dropping, which means getting there early at the very beginning of the day, so if it's opening at 9:30, you want to be there half an hour before because queues can get very long, trust me. Even for extra magic time, if you want to make sure you're actually in the park by 8:30 in the morning, then you need to be at the gates by like 7:45 just to be on the safe side, because people do tend to get here early, and if you plan on getting to the gates at 8:30, you're going to end up with a queue, and by the time you're actually in the park, you would have already missed half of your extra magic time, so don't do that. So yeah, rides that you want to prioritize for extra magic time, I would say Big Thunder Mountain, Peter Pan's Flight, Hyperspace Mountain can be a good one as well, or Buzz Lightyear's Laser Blast. One thing I will say is that if you are not planning on using extra magic time, or if you don't have access to it, if you're not staying in a Disney hotel, if you're just planning on getting here for rope drop, so at 9:30 in the morning, then maybe don't bother going to Big Thunder Mountain or Peter Pan's Flight because those 2 would have already gotten fairly long lines by that point. But don't worry, they will get shorter later on in the evening, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Before that though, I did want to also quickly mention Premier Access. Now Premier Access is a Disneyland Paris paid fast pass system that was introduced after the pandemic in 2021, and you can purchase that on the app if you wish to, and you can either purchase them individually, so for individual rides. For instance, if you go to Big Thunder Mountain and it's got like a 60-minute queue and you just don't want to wait that long, you can go on the app and purchase yourself a Premier Access, and then you can skip the line, or at least you'll have a very short waiting time. time compared to the 60 minutes. Now Premier Access can sometimes sell out, so if again there's a ride that you really want to go on and if you don't want to wait, then it's best to book that or buy that in advance. Worth mentioning though that this is per person, so if Big Thunder Mountain's Premier Access for that day is, for instance, 15 euros, it's per person, per ride. So if you're going with a family member, you're both going to have to pay it. If there's a big group of you, you're going to have to pay for all of them. It can add up, so it's not something that I would recommend doing for all the rides by any means, because it can become extremely expensive. However, if there's a couple of rides that you just desperately really want to go on and the queue times are just not coming down, then it could be something to consider. When we get to the rides in the other park, there's actually one ride that I would kind of recommend it for, but we'll get to that later. Now, as well as the individual Premier Access tickets that you can buy, you can also buy a full-on package, which normally ranges from around 90 euros to 160 euros for the day. I mean, that is expensive, and again, remember, it's per person, so if there's a family of 5 of you, 160 euros per 5 people, that's going to really add up. It's going to be extremely expensive, but that package does mean that you can go on every single Premier Access ride one time per day, and remember, it is just one time per day. So if you want to go on Big Thunder Mountain over and over again with that 160 euro package deal, you can't do that. You can only go on it once, but you can go on every single Premier Access ride at least once. You know what I mean? And I think there's something like 18 rides across both parks that have Premier Access, so could be worth it, although I still don't think you should do that, because out of all the rides, maybe only about 4 or 5 of them actually need the Premier Access. A lot of the other ones you can definitely manage without Premier Access. I do also want to bring up single rider, because that's a thing that you can definitely make use of in both of the parks here. So some of the rides that do have single rider are Hyperspace Mountain. In the other park we've got Spider-Man's Web Adventure, Crush's Coaster, Ratatouille, which is an amazing one to use single rider for. So if you're on a solo visit, or if you don't mind splitting up from your group for just a little bit of time, then it's going to save you up a lot of time. I would highly recommend the Ratatouille one especially. Ratatouille can normally get queues of up to 60 minutes, 70 minutes sometimes, but the single rider is never longer than 20 minutes. Hyperspace Mountain single rider queue annoyingly is not always open, so they tend to only open it when it gets very busy. But if you are in that position where it's extremely busy and the single rider queue is there, then absolutely make use of it. But if you're a group of family or you've got little ones and you just don't want to go on your own, then another option for you is to go late in the evening. I'm talking either during the parade time, just after the parade, or just before the fireworks. My favorite time would be just before the fireworks, because that's when most of the ride times tend to really drop, especially the rides in Fantasyland, where most of the more family-friendly attractions are. A lot of people with younger children may have already gone to their hotels or for a nap or for a rest, so Fantasyland generally becomes a lot quieter in the evenings. And popular rides like Peter Pan's Flight, which normally has queues of up to 2 hours, in the evenings tend to go down to about 40 minutes, 35 minutes, which honestly isn't too bad. Same with the rides in the other park, in Walt Disney Studios Park, so Crush's Coaster. My number one tip would be to try and do that at the end of the day. Of course, you do risk not being able to get on it, because sometimes the wait time might still be wrong, or the ride may have just broken down. So if you really absolutely want to go on a particular ride, then prioritize that and go on it as soon as you can, because you never know what could happen. Weather might affect things, the ride can just break down. So that's actually one of my biggest tips. If you see a ride that you really desperately want to go on, if you're going to get one day, then go on it as soon as you can. If you see the wait time at a reasonable time, go on it. Buy that Premier Access if you need to, and just go on it, because things could go wrong eventually. However, if you've got a few days time, then you can take some risks a little bit more, and Crush's Coaster is one that I would recommend doing later on in the evening, because the queue time becomes a lot shorter. Going back to Fantasyland, one thing to do note is that Fantasyland does tend to close about an hour or an hour and a half before park closing time. So at the moment we're in the summer months and the park is open until 11 p.m. That's when the fireworks happen. There's also a drone show just before that, meaning that Fantasyland tends to close from around 9:30 p.m. So if you're planning on doing the Fantasyland rides in the evening, then make sure you're there before 9:30, so maybe from around 8 to 9 p.m. could be a good time for you to get most of them done. And the reason Fantasyland closes early is because they need to prepare the area just behind the castle for the fireworks and the drones. It's for safety. Very quickly, let's talk about the popular rides in the other park as well, in Walt Disney Studios Park. So Crush's Coaster, we've already kind of touched on it. That's definitely the number one, the most popular ride in Walt Disney Studios Park. In fact, I would go as far as saying Crush's Coaster is the most popular ride across both parks. Everybody wants to go on it. It always has a very long queue. Even the single rider for Crush can be very, very long. So like I said, my number one tip for Crush would be to try and get it done later on in the evening, or if you're extremely lucky and for your extra magic time, you've managed to somehow be at the front of the queue. So like I said, if you want to make the most of your extra magic time, you do need to get to the gates as early as possible so that you're actually in the park by 8:30. And if you are one of the first people in Walt Disney Studios Park by 8:30 in the morning, then absolutely head straight towards Crush's Coaster and you should be able to ride it with very little wait time. But don't bother doing that if there's a bunch of people in front of you, because the queue time for it goes up very quickly because everyone's going that direction. Another ride that you can rope drop or go to quickly doing extra magic time in the other park would be Spider-Man's Web Adventure or Hollywood's Tower of Terror. Those two rides can also get quite long queues. The thing with Spider-Man Web Adventure though is that they do have a single rider for that, so if you don't want to wait too long, you can easily go on a single rider queue, and it's again never longer than 20 minutes, 25 minutes max. Okay, let's talk about entertainment next, because entertainment is a big part of any Disney trip as well, and in my opinion Disneyland Paris has some of the best shows and parades of any Disney park out there. So in terms of what shows are available, the best way to find out is to go on the app again or the official website and check all the names of the shows, their locations, and also when they're performing as well, because sometimes they can change depending on what day you're visiting. Disneyland Paris has a number of extremely popular West End Broadway style shows, such as the Rhythm of Pride lands in Frontierland, which is basically like a shortened version of the incredible Lion King stage show that we can see on Broadway or in the West End, but a little different. It's got its own style and it is fantastic. Some of the most incredible performers I've seen do perform in that show on a daily basis, and it's free. If you're coming to Disneyland Paris, that's complimentary in the price of your ticket to enter the park. We've also got Mickey and the Magician in Walt Disney Studios Park, a show that's been extremely popular ever since it opened up in 2016. A slightly newer show that recently opened is Together, a Pixar musical also in Walt Disney Studios Park, and I would highly recommend that. It is fantastic, especially if you've got little ones who love Pixar characters, Buzz, etc. They're all going to be in there, and they've got a live orchestra. It is fantastic. There's also shows like Disney's Dream Factory with Disney Junior characters, but it's also fun for adults. We've also got a Frozen show in the other park. So honestly, you're never going to be short of shows, and I mean like proper shows that you get to sit down and watch. And this is what I mean about live entertainment being fantastic in Disneyland Paris. They have so many options and they're all really good quality. For these Broadway type shows, the one where you actually get to go in a theater and sit down and watch them, I would highly recommend getting there at least 45 minutes before the performance is about to start, because there's only so much capacity in every theater, and some of the theaters are smaller than the other ones, and a lot of people want to go to them. They're extremely popular, so if you happen to be in the back of the queue, or if you get there very late, like last minute, and expect to be able to go straight into the theater, you might be turned down. Now, on some occasions when it's slightly quieter, you might be fine to get there just 5 minutes before the show and still go in. Of course, if you're a smaller group or if you're a solo traveler, it's a lot easier for you to still be able to make it if you get there later on, because there's more likely for them to have single seats available than, you know, 4 or 5 seats in a row. But yeah, if you really absolutely want to see one of these shows, then I would suggest getting there minimum half an hour early, or even better, 45 minutes early, just to make sure you've got a guaranteed seat and a good seat as well. Now, if you don't want to do that, again, there's always an option for you to pay. So if you go on the app or on the website, you can purchase yourself a Premier Access for some of these shows. Now, not all of these shows have Premier Access, but most of them do. And again, you pay something like 15 euros, and it does vary depending on how busy the park is. But somewhere between 10 and 20 euros, let's say, you pay per person to be able to have a guaranteed reserved spot, meaning that you don't have to get there too early. And as long as you're there before the show starts, you should be able to have a seat. Now, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be a phenomenal seat, so don't get that confused. It doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect view, it just means that you're going to have a seat. I have never done this personally. I've never paid to have a guaranteed spot. Now, granted, I generally travel on my own, or if I'm with somebody, it's only me and one more person, so it's not been too difficult for us to get into a show, and I've never not been able to get into a show because I know roughly when to go there. But if you're a big family, again, if you've only got one day, for instance, and if you really want to try and get the most done, and it could be worth potentially purchasing that so that you don't have to take some time out of your day to just wait in a line to get into the theater. But otherwise, if you're here for a few days, I wouldn't recommend buying the Premier Access to guarantee yourself a spot. That is the same with the parade. So there's a daily parade here at Disneyland Paris. Currently it's called Stars on Parade. It normally happens at around 5:30 p.m. every single day, but again, definitely check the app because it could change. For the daily parade, Stars on Parade, you can also purchase yourself a Premier Access, and again, that was 19 euros. 19 euros per person. Now, I've done a whole video to show you exactly what the view is like for that if you choose to book it and pay 19 euros for it. It just means again that you have a reserved spot and you don't have to start getting ready for the parade too early, but I wouldn't recommend it because the parade route is basically all across Main Street USA. It starts from the corner of It's a Small World, that's where the gates are. The parade comes out from there, and then yeah, it's a very long route, so you should be able to find somewhere to watch it from. I don't think you need to pay 19 euros per person for it personally, but you have the option and you can do it on the app. That also goes for the fireworks. So the nighttime show, of course, is one of the most amazing things about any Disney park, seeing the fireworks, the projections, the drones, which are unique to Disneyland Paris at the moment. We've got the electrical sky parade, which is such an amazing show. It happens projections just before the nighttime show. And again, with a nighttime show, if you want to, you can book yourself a €19 premiere access per person to have a guaranteed spot at the front of the castle. Now, that's probably a little bit more worth it than the parade, because it can help to be close to the castle to be able to see the projections, and you know, there's only so much space in front of the castle really. If you're very far back, you may not be able to see the projections very well. I mean, you'll still be able to see the drones, you'll still be able to see the fireworks, you're still going to have an amazing time. It's just, if you absolutely want to see the projections and if you don't want to wait too long to get a spot, then maybe it could be worth paying that €19 for it. Otherwise, for the nighttime show, if you're not choosing to pay for it, I would recommend getting there maybe about 20 minutes before and just making sure you've got somewhere on Main Street USA. As long as you're in front of the castle somewhere, you should be okay. I wouldn't get there too early, because honestly, even if you decide to, I don't know, get in front of the castle like 3 hours before the show to make sure you've got a guaranteed spot, the train's just going by, chances are that when the show actually starts, the nighttime show, the person in front of you who you thought, oh, it's just an innocent person, I've got an amazing view of the castle whilst you've been waiting, they might have a child who suddenly joins them, the child decides to go on their shoulder, they might block your view. It just won't be worth it in my opinion, because people also put their cameras up. I don't know, I don't think it's worth, you know, spending 2-3 hours of your time just waiting in front of the castle for the fireworks show. Either just go for that €19 guaranteed spot if you really want to see it from a perfect view, or use the time before the fireworks to go on rides, because they're going to have such low wait times that it's going to be, in my opinion, a shame to not make the most of it. As long as you're there in front of the castle 20 minutes, 25 minutes, let's say half an hour before the fireworks show, you should be able to have a place to stand, and then yeah, you'll have some view. It's not going to be the most amazing view, but you'll be able to see some of it. For the parade, Stars on Parade, which I mentioned earlier, I normally tend to watch it right next to It's a Small World. Like I said, this is where the parade starts from. This means that you'll get to see the beginning of the parade, and the parade normally takes about 15 minutes to go all the way down Main Street USA. So if you're seeing it, if you're catching it at the beginning of the parade, that means that you can leave and come to Fantasyland, which is literally where you're going to be, and then try and do some of the rides with lower wait times, because a lot of people, the majority of people, are going to be watching the parade, the daily parade, Stars on Parade, when it's happening. So it's a perfect time again to make the most of some of the lower wait times that you should be finding. But if you really want to see it on Main Street USA with the castle in the backdrop, then that's always a good spot too. Of course, at the moment we've also got A Million Splashes of Color, which is an extra parade / show that's happening about 4 times per day, and again, definitely check the performance times on the app. That one happens in front of the castle, but it's almost like a parade that goes across Main Street and then gets to the castle, and there's 4 different stages, and the characters go on stage, they do a full-on dance routine. It is so much fun. For me, it's definitely one of the highlights of Disneyland Paris at the moment in 2024. So if you want to catch that, like I said, you've got 4 chances per day. I would say if you want it to be slightly less busy, maybe try the earliest one or the latest one, and that actually goes with all the shows. Same with Rhythm of Pride Lands, the Lion King show. If you don't want it to be too busy, then it's probably best to go to the very first showing, because most people are going to be prioritizing other things like rides and characters at the beginning of the day. Or sometimes the later showings can be good too. For Mickey and the Magician, at the moment during the summer months, they have one that starts at like 7:30, so that one tends to be a little bit quieter than some of the more middle of the day ones. Next we have food, because everybody needs food, and Disney snacks can be very fun and cute. So firstly, if you're used to US park snacks, then the ones in Disneyland Paris, while some of them can be very good and some of them are very cute as well as being really nice, there just isn't as much variety, unfortunately, when it comes to Disney snacks here in Disneyland Paris. It's something that is constantly improving, so hopefully if you're visiting in the next few years, it's going to get even better. But don't expect quite as much variety and quite as many exciting snacks. However, there are some that are actually very good. So from the Market House Deli, one of my favorite snacks to get is the Croque Monsieur, which is basically like a toasted ham and cheese sandwich with melted cheese. It is so good, extremely popular. You can either get it with ham or with turkey, and it's one of my go-to snacks. If you've watched any of my vlogs before, you've probably seen me have it multiple times. But also, right next to it at the cable car bake shop, you can find a quiche. Again, I'm a big cheese lover, and if you love cheese as well, you're in France, they do really nice cheese, so the quiche at the cable car bakehouse I would highly recommend as well. Of course, you will be able to find loads of other fun snacks around the park as well. If you're into your ice cream, they have some cute, wonderfully themed ice cream in Fantasyland at the Marché. It can get very busy, so if you're planning to get yourself some ice cream from there, especially on a very hot day, then get prepared to wait a little bit, but they do some really cute ice creams, and they taste nice as well. You can also get some cute Mickey-shaped snacks at the Boardwalk Candy Palace, which is on Main Street USA. In fact, they've got loads of fun sweet snacks over there, the cake pops and Mickey cookies, fudge as well they sell. Also macarons, if you want to try macarons here in Disneyland Paris, of course a very French thing, then you can do that at the Boardwalk Candy Palace. If you want Mickey waffles, they're not as easily available here as, for instance, in the US parks, and they definitely don't do the Mickey pretzels that Disney World and Disneyland California do. But one thing that I would recommend that is actually kind of underrated is Victoria's. So Victoria's is actually a table service restaurant at the end of Main Street USA. So when you're coming to the park, when you're walking to the castle, pass, or you'll find it on your right at the end of it. And sometimes it can get a little bit of a queue. You can't make a reservation for it, but if you see it quiet and there's no queue, or if there's only a little bit of a queue, then it could be worth going in there and having a nice little afternoon snack maybe. And they actually do the Mickey waffles in there as well, but they bring it to you nicely on a plate. They do it with different flavors. The Mickey waffles are a little bit bigger as well than the ones that you can find in the park. They also do themed drinks there depending on what time of year you're visiting. So in the hotter months they tend to do some milkshakes with characters on them, and in the colder months there's things like hot chocolates, different kinds of coffee. It's just a really lovely place to sit down and be away from the hustle and bustle of Main Street USA for a little bit. Now let's talk about quick service. Quick service restaurants in Disneyland Paris, again, not necessarily my favorite, but there are some good ones, and the ones that I would suggest to you is Toad Hall, the restaurant there behind me, that sells fish and chips. So really mainly it's just one type of food. So if you're into your fish and chips and if you want something quick service, which is basically the term Disney uses for fast food, Toad Hall can be a good option for you. They also do vegan fish and chips, which is fake fish, I suppose, and that's meant to be quite nice as well. Another one of my personal favorites at the moment is Hakuna Matata in Adventureland, because the things that they sell there are a little bit more unique than some of the other stuff you can find in the park. So they have some beautiful chicken and rice there. They do chakalaka, which is vegan. They also do some nice chicken strips there for people that might be a little bit more picky. So yeah, Hakuna Matata is also very nicely themed, so I would highly recommend that. We've also got Bella Notte, also in Fantasyland. That tends to be a very popular restaurant because it serves Italian quick service food, and you've got your pastas and your pizzas and your lasagnas, and that's also where you can find yourself a Mickey pizza, which is one of the fun things about Disneyland Paris. Actually, they do Mickey pizzas. You can either get a children's portion or an adult's portion, and you can either get it with just cheese, or I think one of them is with pepperoni. But yeah, the famous Mickey pizzas, you can find them either at Bella Notte or at Colonel Hattie's, which is in Adventureland. And actually, something that not many people know, you can also get the Mickey pizzas in Disney Village, which is their version of downtown Disney here in Paris. At the New York style sandwiches, you can get them there, and it tends to be a lot quieter than the ones in the park. If you want slightly better pizza, Stark Factory over in Walt Disney Studios Park's Avengers Campus is a good place to sit and eat. You're paying a little bit more for the pizza there than you would at Bella Notte, but the taste is better. They actually make the pizzas fresh there in front of you, and they are so good. And I'm talking as somebody who's not even the biggest pizza fan necessarily. Casa de Coco is another good restaurant in Frontierland. It's cocoa themed, and they do burritos and nachos and vegan burritos as well if you're vegan or vegetarian. Cowboy Cookouts, probably another one of my favorites. They do mainly meat stuff as well as a veggie burger, so if you are vegetarian or vegan, don't worry. But they mainly do meat stuff, so like chicken or ribs, etc. It's quick service, and it's kind of further away from some of the other restaurants in Frontierland, so it's normally a little bit more quiet than some of the other quick service restaurants, so it could be a good spot to go on a very busy day perhaps. Now, quick service meals at the moment in Disneyland Paris tend to range from around 12 euros to 20 euros, so that's kind of roughly what you're going to be paying for an adult, which is kind of expensive, and the price is going to continue going up, so bear that in mind. But it's still less expensive than if you were to go to table service. One thing to do note as well is that quick service restaurants as well as snack bars can become very busy, especially during prime lunch and dinner time. So here in Disneyland Paris, most people tend to eat lunch between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m, so just a little bit later than perhaps what we're used to in the UK. And dinner tends to be from around 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. So if you want to try and avoid those times, then eat your dinner early, eat your lunch early, or eat it later. So for instance, if you want to go to a quick service for lunch, I would recommend going there as soon as it opens, maybe 11:30. That's when most of them open. Should be a lot quieter than if you were to go there at 1 p.m, and same in the evening. Maybe get there at 6 rather than 8 p.m. when most people are going to be wanting to eat. A lot of the quick service restaurants also do have the option to do mobile ordering, which if you're familiar with the US parks, then you've probably used it before. Now, one thing I will say about mobile ordering here in Disneyland Paris is that it's just not as good as the US versions, because the mobile ordering, the app is just, it's different. It's not the same app that they use in the US parks. It takes a bit longer to do it, and honestly, sometimes the mobile ordering queue, like the click and collect situation, can actually be a little bit longer than if you were to just go and queue up and order there and then. So don't count on it. Maybe just play it by ear, see how things are. If you see that the wait times are very long, like there's long queues to order there and then perhaps it could be worth mobile ordering and selecting a time to go and collect it. Just bear in mind that mobile ordering, unfortunately, here doesn't always mean that you're not going to wait. You may still end up waiting in a long line just to collect your food. So yeah, another perhaps more niche thing to mention is that France is an extremely environmentally friendly country, and especially in the past few years I've noticed they've made so many changes, not just in Disneyland Paris but also in Paris and in France in general. This means that you will not find any single-use plastic in the parks, like at all, which is a good thing. Of course it's a good thing, but if you're used to the US parks where they use single-use plastic for almost everything, I mean the Starbucks is there, constantly have plastic cups, there's just so much single-use plastic there. If you get a snack from any of the shops there, it comes in a plastic container that you just throw out in the end. So if you're used to that, just just bear that in mind. It's not like that at all in Disneyland Paris. If you're buying a snack, they tend to give them to you maybe like in a very thin layer of paper that is like biodegradable, so it does make it a little bit harder to carry it to places. So for instance, if you're here during a busy time, if you just grabbed yourself a snack from somewhere and if you're hoping to take it somewhere else to eat, you might drop it by the time you get to your destination because they don't give them to you in like full-on plastic containers. So that's something to bear in mind. It's the same with cutlery, so you're not going to get plastic knife and forks by any means. Sometimes you might get wooden ones if you're lucky. Sometimes you might get reusable plastic ones that they literally just wash and reuse for future guests. Or if you're very unlucky, or perhaps lucky in some ways, you might get edible cutlery, which in my opinion, I mean, on paper it's a good idea, but I have tried to eat with edible knives and forks before and they break so easily. I tried to eat an ice cream once with a brownie. They gave me a chocolate biscuit spoon or knife to try and eat the brownie with. I mean, it was literally made of biscuit/chocolate, and the brownie was quite hard. So as I was trying to eat it, the spoon broke and then I just had no spoon. Honestly, I still tried to eat it with a tiny bit of spoon that I had left, but it was difficult. So that's something to definitely bear in mind. It's not something that many people mention, but if you're used to the US parks, you might get a little bit of a shock when you come to Disneyland Paris. So my recommendation would be that if you find that a little bit stressful or maybe annoying, then definitely bring your own cutlery if you have reusable cutlery with you. Or I tend to bring little like snack boxes because quite often when I'm doing food videos, I can't always finish everything anyway, so I always put the rest of them there, and it does help for carrying snacks as well. So there's some snacks, like I said, the way they present them to you is just, you can see them about to fall. Like even when the cast member's presenting it to you, you already are thinking, oh my god, this could fall, this could go wrong really, really badly. And you're expected to actually take that somewhere with you as well and find a seat. And so yeah, I would say bring something with you. Now let's very quickly talk about table service dining as well. So Disneyland Paris does have a variety of table service restaurants. Some of them are character dining, some of them are buffets, some of them are just like very nice table service restaurants, and they are generally very popular and some of the better restaurants in Disneyland Paris actually. Restaurants like Waltz on Main Street USA, or Chez Remy in Walt Disney Studios Park, Captain Jack's in Adventureland, Auberge de Cendrillon, which is a princess character dining in Fantasyland. All of these tend to book up extremely fast, so if you want to dine at any of these restaurants, I would highly recommend going on the app or the website as soon as possible. The website tends to be a little bit better than the app. It just shows the availabilities a lot more accurately than the app, but yeah, go there, make a reservation for the date that you want to eat there. If you're staying on site, you can start making reservation up to a year before your trip, which is amazing, but if you're not staying on site, then 2 months before. The one thing I will say is that if you can't find your reservation, the reservation that you want, if it's all fully booked when you're looking on the app or the website, please don't lose hope, because every single restaurant also does have some walk-up spaces available every single day, so you might still be able to eat where you want to. And the best way to do that is that on the day that you want to eat there, either go to City Hall at the top of Main Street and try there, because they have access to all the restaurants and they can find out if there's any last minute cancellations for you, or just go directly to the restaurant that you want to eat at. And my recommendation would be to get there as early as possible. So for instance, if a restaurant is opening at 11 a.m. for lunch, then make sure you're there just before 11 so that when they open, you can just be there, present yourself and say, hey, I don't have a reservation, but is it possible for me to come and eat here very quickly? And because they have just opened up, more than likely not a lot of people have already come in, so they probably will have some space and they should be able to, hopefully, fingers crossed, let you in. So yeah, as long as you're prepared to eat maybe in slightly more unconventional times, then you should be able to eat at most of the dining reservations, including PM Kitchen, a buffet restaurant that is in the Avengers Campus, which is very popular. The hotel restaurants there tend to only be open for the evening, so for instance, Manhattan Restaurant, one of my absolute favorite table service restaurants, is located in Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel, and that tends to open at 6 p.m. every evening. A very, very popular restaurant. So is Downtown, the buffet right next door, and both of them open at 6 p.m. So if you want to get a reservation there and you can't get it, just make sure you're there just before 6 p.m. and test your luck, see what happens. Worst comes to worst, a cast member just says, no, sorry, we don't actually have any availability, and you can just explore the hotel a little bit and come back to the parks if you wish to. Just don't lose hope. It makes me so sad when I see people commenting about how they couldn't get a reservation that they wanted to and they're so upset and it was their dream thing, because there's so many other things that you can do here in Disneyland Paris. It's really not just about that one dining reservation, and even if that dining reservation is important to you, you may still be able to get it when you actually come to the parks. Now let me very quickly touch on breakfast as well, because breakfast options in the parks are very limited. It's not like the US parks where there's honestly so many breakfast sandwiches left, right and center when you're visiting. The only breakfast food that you can find in the parks, if you're not dining in a table service restaurant, is things like croissants or pain au chocolat, coffee, things like that. So continental continental breakfast rather than cooked breakfast. Of course, you can always book yourself a table service restaurant, so Plaza Gardens is a breakfast, or Auberge de Cendrillon is starting up a breakfast very soon as well with princesses. But if you're hoping to just grab yourself a hot cooked breakfast or something in the parks, then you can't really do that, unfortunately. So if you're a big breakfast kind of person, then it might be worth getting your breakfast at Disney Village, or maybe coming to the parks for extra magic time, doing a couple of rides, doing some attractions, and then leaving the park for an hour, getting your breakfast in Disney Village, and then coming back. And Disney Village has quite a lot of options. Rosalie is one of the most recent restaurants open there, and it's one of my favorite places both for lunch, dinner, and for breakfast. The breakfast option there is fantastic. I've done a whole video on that if you want to check it out. And it's diners at a full English breakfast for I think €17, which is not too bad. It's all cooked and you get to sit at a table service restaurant and enjoy it before you come to the parks. Of course, all the hotels have their own breakfast buffets going on as well. And then we've got the Royal Pub that serves breakfast. Earl of Sandwich is also serving breakfast in the morning. I think normally they stop at around 11 a.m, so not too bad. And of course, you've got McDonald's too. So Disney Village actually has a McDonald's. So if you want your regular, I don't know, egg and sausage McMuffin, then you can get those at McDonald's. Next, let's talk about character meets, because character meets are huge in Disneyland Paris. They are so popular. Characters tend to spend quite a lot of time with each guest as well, making their lines often very long. I mean, it's the norm to spend about an hour, 2 hours in the queue just to meet, I don't know, Pinocchio or something. If you get a character meet at lower than half an hour's wait time, you should be happy, because that's very rare. And in my opinion, the character meets in Disneyland Paris are some of the best character meets you can get in any of the Disney parks. I've been lucky enough to have visited all the Disney parks across the world, and the character meets in Disneyland Paris are definitely some of my favorites. Like I said, because you often get that personal touch and the characters genuinely love spending time with you, the guests love interacting with characters. By the way, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you just want to go there and get yourself a photo and come out, then you can do that as well. But for the most part, characters like to just have a little bit of fun with the guests, meaning that the wait times will be long. So again, if a particular character is a priority for you, then I would suggest getting there early, because oftentimes they can close the lines much earlier than is advertised on the app. And that's because, for instance, if the app advertises that Winnie the Pooh is meeting from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m, and by 1 p.m. the queue is already so long that the cast members know that Winnie the Pooh is going to have to be out until like 3 p.m. already, they have no choice but to already close the line. You know what I mean? So if you show up at like 2 p.m. thinking you can still join the line and meet Winnie the Pooh, unfortunately it would have already been closed. So especially for the more popular characters, which honestly all the characters in Disneyland Paris are popular, everybody just loves characters here, do make sure to get there early. You can even, and some people actually do that, they use their extra magic time to go and start waiting in line for really popular meets, such as the princess meets at the Princess Pavilion, which oftentimes can get queues of up to 3 hours. It is so popular. That's where you go and get to meet a princess inside a cute little pavilion, and it's actually really nicely decorated in there as well. It's really beautiful. You feel like royalty, but you don't know what princess you're gonna get, so that's something to bear in mind as well. You could be queuing for 2 hours and get a princess that you don't even really care too much about, or you've not even seen their film of. But believe me, people still do that, especially a lot of parents, and big shout out to parents who get there early to reserve a spot for their children. So yeah, you can do that. Same with Meet Mickey Mouse, his theater also, that gets very busy as well. Again, 2-hour line queues can be very normal for Meet Mickey. So if you want to spend your hour of extra time in the park in the morning just waiting in line so that you can be first in line once they open up the attraction, then you can do that. It's not something I would personally recommend, but it's something that some people do, and if you're really into your characters, you can do that too. It's definitely also worth mentioning that the majority of the character meets happen from morning until afternoon time. They tend to stop roughly at around 4 or 5 p.m. From 5 p.m. onwards, it's very rare for you to be able to see any characters. I don't really know why. It's something that I wish they would change in Disneyland Paris, because like 5 p.m. is too early even for characters. They don't need to get that much sleep, surely. So yeah, character meets really tend to happen in the morning and early afternoon time. Bear that in mind. Now in the other park, in Walt Disney Studios Park in Avengers Campus, something really cool that you can do, especially if you're into your Marvel characters, is that they've got this thing called the Superhero Training Center. It's in Avengers Campus, and you can go and meet different superheroes there. I've met Spider-Man there before. It was loads and loads of fun, but the only way to do that is a virtual queue. In fact, that is actually the only thing in Disneyland Paris at the time of filming that has a virtual queue. The virtual queue opens twice a day, so once at 10 a.m. in the morning and the other time at 2 p.m. You just go on the app, follow the instructions, and then join the virtual queue for whatever character you want to. Oftentimes one of them can be Spider-Man, sometimes they've got Iron Man, sometimes it's like a special secret superhero. So join one of them, and yeah, you're in a virtual queue. The app will give you notifications when it's time for you to start getting to the attraction, and it's honestly a very cool experience because it's a full-on experience. It's not just a character meet. You get to go inside the training center, you learn some little poses, they train with you. The characters there, the superheroes there are fantastic, really good fun. And again, especially if you've got a Marvel fan in your group, then highly recommend that. Just make sure you are on the app at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. because the virtual queues tend to go very quickly. Of course, the last option if you really want to meet characters is to do one of the character dining experiences, which I've already kind of talked about before in the dining section of the video. So Plaza Gardens, Auberge de Cendrillon and the Royal Banquet inside the Disneyland Hotel are currently the 3 restaurants that offer character dining. Now, whilst we're on the topic of characters, I thought I would also briefly mention PhotoPass, because Disneyland Paris also does have PhotoPass. And again, if you're familiar with the US parks, then you probably already know what PhotoPass is. Basically, they've got professional photographers scattered around the park, and they can take photos of you, whether it's with a character, whether it's with a certain monument, it could be the castle sometimes, or obviously your on-ride photos as well. They can all be included in your PhotoPass package. PhotoPass at the moment, I believe, costs around 80 euros, and you can either purchase it before your trip or just buy it when you come here. You can actually wait until you've seen the photos that the photographers have taken and then make up your mind. So you don't have to commit to anything before your trip if you don't want to, because 80 euros is still quite a little bit of money. And it is worth mentioning that you can take your own photos if you want to. It's not like you can't take your own photos. It's not that Disney doesn't want you to take your own photos. That's just like an extra thing, especially if families, for instance, want to be in a group photo together, and often the mom or the dad is the one taking the photos, and the PhotoPass photographers allow the whole family to have a photo together. But equally, most cast members are also happy to just take your camera and take a photo of you if you wish to. And that goes with other guests as well. Oftentimes other guests might ask you to take a photo of them, and then you can ask them to take one of you as well if you want. The thing with PhotoPass is that it's definitely not as available as it is in the US park. So on Main Street USA, you won't find a single photographer taking photos of you in front of the castle. Very rarely they might have 1 or 2 photographers on the sides of the castle doing some beautiful shots. But really, if you're looking to purchase the PhotoPass to get photos of yourself with different lovely backdrops of Disneyland Paris, then it's not going to be worth it, because there are very few of them. However, if you really want some professional shots of yourself with Mickey, for instance, in his theater, and meet Mickey, then it could be worth it. Same if you're wanting to meet a princess at the Princess Pavilion. I mean, if you've waited like 3 hours to get in there, then you might as well also purchase a PhotoPass, because they can be a lot more professional looking. They've got a flash and everything, and they often put little like notes around it as well if you wish to. So the PhotoPass can be useful for character meets, but also bear in mind that not every single character meet will have a PhotoPass. And actually, whilst we're on the subject of characters still, not every single character is going to be advertised on the app. Sometimes they do a lot of like random character meets across the park. In fact, the majority of characters that you'll find in the park are not actually advertised on the app, so it is worth just walking around the park and seeing random ones and then enjoying them. One of my favorite ones is Mickey by Phantom Manor. Not many people know about him because they don't tend to talk about him or advertise him on the app or the website, but you can actually meet Mickey Mouse in his Phantom Manor outfit right next to the ride, so that's something that I would definitely recommend doing. Shopping, let's face it, shopping is a big part of any Disney trip, and I love my merchandise, and there are so many great shops here in Disneyland Paris. Now again, not quite as varied as you might find in Walt Disney World, or especially in somewhere like Tokyo Disney, but they do still have some really cool unique items that you can buy only here in Disneyland Paris. And my best suggestion would be to try and do your shopping either when the parade is on. So if you're here for multiple days, maybe on one of the days you don't really care to watch the parade again, then that's the perfect time to come in the shops, because they're going to be so quiet, especially the ones on Main Street USA, which often can be very busy. Right now there is a parade on, and this is why you can't see anybody behind me. There are some people here, don't worry, but not quite as many as there would be if the parade wasn't currently happening. Another time that's quite good to do your shopping would be at the end of the evening, so well after the fireworks, because when the fireworks end at around 11:30 right now during the summer months, the park should still be open until around midnight, and the shops on Main Street USA will also still be open until around midnight. And a lot of people are just desperate to leave the park as soon as possible, especially people with younger families. So if you want to just wait around a little bit, Disney wants you to stay and do some more shopping, and that is a good time to do it, because it's going to be definitely quieter than if you do it in the middle of the day. Look at this cute Mike Wazowski over here, very sweet. By the way, from experience, the merchandise prices here are just a little bit cheaper than what you can find in the US parks. They're still not cheap by any means compared to Tokyo. They're expensive, but compared to the US parks, they're a little bit cheaper. And one more thing that I want to mention about shopping is that if you are staying in a Disney hotel, they do have a shopping service where if you buy anything in the parks anytime before, I think, 3 p.m, you can let the cast member know which hotel you're staying at, and then leave your stuff, your merchandise, with that cast member. And then once you get back to your hotel in the evening from 8 p.m. onwards, you should be able to collect your merchandise items from the shop of your hotel, which is just an amazing service. Now, I do think that you have to have spent more than 50 euros for that service to be offered to you, but as long as you spend 50 euros, which is very easy to do, then you can use that service. Another quick tip would be to use the arcades. So Disneyland Paris is unique in the fact that it's got 2 arcades across Main Street USA for colder weather, when it's raining, when it's snowing, because sometimes it does snow, or when it's even just really hot. Basically, if you just want a covered walkway, or if you want to simply avoid the extreme crowds on Main Street USA, perhaps just after a parade ends or something, then the arcades are a fantastic way to get through Main Street USA. We've got Liberty Arcade and Discovery Arcade. Both of them are actually really nice inside as well, and you can have access to most of the shops on Main Street USA from the arcades too, so I'd highly recommend you using them. Now let's talk about some miscellaneous / random things. Firstly, you see that beautiful castle over there, Le Château de la Belle au Bois Dormant, the Sleeping Beauty Castle, otherwise known as the most beautiful Disney park castle of all of them, and that's something that most people tend to agree on. It's definitely my favorite anyway. You can actually go up it. You can go up the castle, have a little explore. There's a full-on gallery with Aurora, beautiful stained glass photos of Aurora and her family and her story. They can go and explore inside the castle if you wish to. They can get a nice view of Fantasyland from the balcony of the castle. It is just such a beautiful, detailed castle. There's even 2 shops inside the castle, believe it or not, and I've done a whole video on that, which I'll link down below if you want to. They've got a Christmas shop in there, as well as another shop that does a lot of really nice like figurines and ornaments, so definitely worth checking out. So if you ever find yourself stuck on what to do, if all the other rides for instance are very busy, then go inside the castle, explore it. And also there's a dragon that lives underneath the castle, which again, very unique to Disneyland Paris, and I would highly recommend giving him a visit. Another thing is, you're probably going to be using your phone quite a bit when you're in the parks. Again, that's something that tends to happen in any Disney park these days, especially because we've all got apps and things to purchase on the app, having a look at our photos, etc. So definitely make sure to bring a portable charger. But if you happen to forget that, they do actually have a couple of places where you can rent portable chargers. It starts from about €4 per hour. It can go up to around €10 if you have it for the full day, and if you don't return it until the next day, then it's something like €20. So you don't want to do that, but I think €4 isn't too bad, and you can find them at the entrance of the park, so underneath the main station. Also, there are a couple located next to the toilets at the top of Main Street. It's something that I often tend to do because sometimes I do forget my portable charger. It would have been nice if they had fuel rods here like they do in the US parks, but unfortunately not as of yet. So you do have to pay €4 every single time. Now, something that's very different here in Disneyland Paris compared to any of the other Disney parks is that smoking is allowed here. Obviously not everywhere. They do have designated smoking areas, but unfortunately not every single guest follows those rules. So it's not going to be uncommon for you to walk around and see somebody vaping or smoking, and as much as cast members try their best to stop these guests, there's not always going to be a cast member around in every single location, and that's something that you're just going to have to unfortunately accept. If you're not used to it, I know it can be a little bit jarring, especially if you're traveling with children and you don't want them to, you know, be around smoke, but it does happen, and I think it's going to be the case for a long time. I mean, smoking in France is still a big thing, and they do have designated areas like I said, so some people do choose to actually go in those areas, but a lot of them don't, so just bear that in mind. Now, to counteract that with something fun is that you can actually get champagne on Main Street USA in Disneyland Paris. I believe it's the only Disney theme park, Disney Castle Park, where you're allowed to do that. The champagne cart is normally again at the end of Main Street USA, right next to Victoria's actually, so when you're walking towards the castle you should be able to find the champagne cart to your right, and they give them to you in little plastic beautiful champagne flutes with the Disneyland Paris logo on them, which you can actually keep. It's a little souvenir for you, and you can enjoy a nice glass of champagne on Main Street USA with the castle as your backdrop. That's very unique to Disneyland Paris and something that a lot of people enjoy about this park. Very quickly, let's talk about water. Now, a lot of people would recommend you to bring your own water bottle, and that can be a good idea, but the water fountains here just aren't as available as in the US parks. They do have some, and some of them do work and some of them don't work, so it can be very unpredictable, especially when you're visiting in the colder months of the year. Sometimes the water fountains just might not work and you might be stuck with no water. Of course, if you're ever dining in a table service restaurant, then you can ask for a glass of tap water and they'll bring that to you free of charge. But again, the quick services don't tend to do that thing where the US parks do, where you can just go in there and ask for water. It's not something that's ever been tried, to be honest, but it's just not the norm. They don't do it, and the only way to get water is the water fountains, which sometimes work, sometimes don't. So I don't know, maybe just buy yourself some packs of water cheaply from a supermarket because they're more expensive in the parks, and then bring them with you to the parks. Luggage. What are you going to do with the luggage on your last day? Now, they do actually have a little bagagerie at the entrance of the park to your right, so if you're facing the Disneyland Hotel, go to your right, the very far right, and you should be able to find the baggage storage area. The prices can be quite expensive for there. I think it starts with something like €8 for a small bag, and it can go up to €20, and sometimes it can become full and they won't accept your bag, so it's not necessarily my recommendation of where to store your luggage. All the Disneyland hotels do have a free storage service, so if you're staying in a Disney hotel, then you can of course drop your bags there on your last day, come to the parks, then go back to your hotel and grab it before you go home. That also tends to be the case with most of the non-Disney hotels, so the partner hotels also for the most part do offer a little baggage service. And the train station, the Marne-la-Vallée train station, which is right next to Disneyland Paris, also has a little bagagerie, and the prices there are a little bit cheaper. It is self-service and you do need cash to be able to use it, but the prices there start from something like €3 per small item, so that's €5 cheaper than what you're going to be doing in Disneyland Paris. So you can also leave them there if you want to. And there's also something called the Disney Luggage Express service. So if you're staying in a Disney hotel and you are traveling by train, if you're getting to Marne-la-Vallée train station, you can use the Disney Express service. So you get there, they give you all your tickets for the parks, and you leave your luggage with the cast members. They send it to your hotel, and at the end of the evening when you go to your hotel, your luggage will be there ready for you, which is amazing. And that's only possible if you're staying in a Disney hotel and traveling by train to Marne-la-Vallée train station. One more thing is the famous celebratory badges that you can get in the US parks and some of the Asian parks as well. They do have them here in Disneyland Paris too, but it's not, again, as readily available as they are in the US parks, so you don't really see random cast members on Main Street handing them out to you. The only way to get them is to either go to City Hall, which is on Main Street USA, and ask for one, and if they have some in stock, they'll happily give them to you. Or if you're staying in a Disney hotel, maybe mention it's your birthday if it is your birthday, and they might just give you a happy birthday badge there and then. But yeah, they're not, again, as easily available as they are in the US parks, but they do exist, so worth trying to get them. Just don't put a lot of hope into getting them because they might already be sold out. And if you've gotten so far into this video, you've probably realized that Disneyland Paris is quite different to the US parks, and that's probably something that you already expected. And because of that, the service, the customer service, the cast members, the way they interact with you will also be slightly different to what you might be used to in the US parks. I think that's definitely something to bear in mind when you're visiting Disneyland Paris. Don't expect the exact same level of customer service that you get in the US parks. The customer service isn't any worse or any better, it's just different here. It's how it is in France. So you're still gonna have an amazing time. Trust me, I come to Disneyland Paris on a very regular basis, and I've had such amazing cast member experiences here. In fact, some of my best cast member memories have been here in Disneyland Paris. They are some of the best cast members worldwide, so as long as you know that it's going to be a little bit different to perhaps what you're used to, you're going to have an amazing time with them. And just like that, we have come to the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful, I hope you found it useful, I hope it gave you some tips for your next Disneyland Paris, whether you've already been here before but it's been ages and ages since you were last here, or if it's your first visit altogether, and especially if your first visit specifically to Disneyland Paris but you're used to US parks or any of the other Disney parks. I actually got this video idea from one of you guys who kindly commented and asked me if I could make a video for people who already know the Disney parks but have never made it to Disneyland Paris yet, because quite often the first time at Disneyland Paris tips videos tend to be mainly catered to people who've never been to any Disney park, like things like wear comfortable clothes and check out the app and things like that. Most of us who've been to at least one Disney park probably already know this, which is why I try to make this video as thorough as possible. So thank you so much for bearing with me. I know it's been a very long video, but I hope it was helpful in some ways. Please let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more videos like this. I already have so many other videos about Disneyland Paris, from literally every single restaurant review to loads of character meets, quick services, snacks, etc. All of that, hotels as well. You can find them on my channel. Huge shout out to my Patreon members and YouTube members for making videos like this possible, and also thank you so much to you right now for watching this video. I appreciate you. Follow me on Instagram if you want to. Subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.